Imagine waking up before sunrise in a world where the scorching heat of the sun is just one of the threats to your survival. With every step, the hot desert earth seems to want to swallow you. The bread you eat tastes of dust, and invisible gods watch your every move, waiting for a mistake that could cost your soul. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where the greatness of pyramids and riches does not tell the true story. Here, what matters is the daily struggle for a future in the afterlife. Could you survive? As you rise from your rudimentary bed of straw and dirt, the first rays of light begin to paint the horizon. The air still has the softness of dawn, but you know that in a few hours, the heat will be unbearable. The Nile below, calm and deep, seems almost indifferent to your fate. But it is the true center of life in Egypt. Without it, you would be nothing. Your work field, your food, even the water you drink come from it. However, it is also unpredictable. The Nile can be generous or merciless, and it dictates the cycles of life and death throughout the year. You quickly dress in a simple linen kilt, the only fabric your family can afford. The children, still small, run around the house without worrying about the heat. But they will soon learn that in Egypt, the heat is just one of many adversities they will have to face. The bread you eat in the morning is hard, made from coarse grains and full of tiny stones that will tear your teeth out before you turn 40. The feeling of tiredness is already there, weighing on your bones, but you know the work will not wait. The overseer will shout your name at any moment, and if you do not answer, punishment will follow. There is no room for weakness, only for strength and resilience. As the first rays of the sun illuminate the small alleyways of the village, you already feel the weight of the day approaching. The houses around you are silent, but not for long. The sound of the overseers, of tools hitting stones, and the murmur of other workers begin to invade the environment. Everyone has their task, and yours, as always, will be heavy, carrying stones, building clay dikes, maybe even working on the pyramids or the Pharaoh's temple. Each day is an effort to stay alive and support your family without knowing if the next great Nile flood will bring salvation or destruction to the harvest. But for now, all you can do is keep moving forward. With one last look at your house, you set off for another day of toil, with a heavy heart but with the strength of survival as your only ally. The fear of the gods, the need to please them to secure a place in the afterlife, hangs over your head. But that, you know, is a struggle for another day. The day is already in full swing when you join the other workers. The sound of tools hitting against the stone echoes through the village. Today, your task is to carry blocks of limestone, a job that requires unparalleled physical effort. The load is heavy, the heat is suffocating, and the ground covered in hot sand seems to melt under your feet. But the alternative of not complying with what is required is even worse. Those who fail, who cannot keep up with the imposed pace, will be replaced. Survival here has no place for weakness. You look around and see other men, women, and even children, all facing the same challenge. Each movement is repeated mechanically. Each step is calculated to ensure the work is done on time. No matter how much your body begs for rest, the sun continues to shine relentlessly, and the Nile in the background watches in silence. With each stone block, you feel the weight of the Egyptian civilization being built, but also the pressure on your own shoulders. In the midst of all this, you begin to notice something curious. Although the work is brutal and exhausting, there is a sense of community in the air. Each person, with their own dreams and fears, carries the same burden, all in the hope that, at the end of the day, the reward will come in the form of a prosperous harvest, a life free of disease, or even a small compensation. But deep down, you know that this hope is fragile. The Nile, which is the source of life, can also bring destruction with its violent floods. Everything depends on the unpredictability of nature. As the hours pass and sweat starts to run down your face, you feel a constant pain in your back. The weight of the stones, the pressure not to fail, and the worry about the future. All of this begins to accumulate. The food you ate in the morning already seems distant, and the heat is making the work even harder. The few hours of rest are sometimes not enough to recover the strength you have lost. The hard, flavorless bread becomes a bitter memory of a simple but necessary life. At noon, when the sun is at its highest, you seek a little shade, but it is minimal, almost non-existent. The work continues without stopping, the women in parallel tasks. grind grains and prepare what they can for the next meal, but resources are limited. And the scarcity of food and water makes the scenario even more desolate. The grains you grow, the dried fish, and the onions are all you can expect until the next harvest, which once again depends on how the Nile behaves. And so the cycle continues. The struggle for survival never ceases. With each task completed, the weight of the next challenge approaches. You try to ignore the tiredness, because you know that if you stop, it might be the last time you have the strength to continue. In ancient Egypt, life is a constant struggle against heat, hunger, and the invisible threat of the gods, who can decide your fate at any moment. The only certainty is that as long as the Nile flows and the sun shines, the work will never stop. You finally sit down, tired and exhausted, and your meal seems more like a routine than a relief. The hard, brittle bread is the most common food for a worker like you. Made with coarse grains, it even contains small stones that, over time, wear down your teeth. Eating becomes a task of survival, not pleasure. Each bite is a reminder that life here is made of simplicity and constant struggle. The smell of fresh onions mixes with that of dust and sweat. Sometimes you might find a bit of dried fish, but it's rare. In ancient Egypt, meat is not something found on the table every day, and when it appears, it is a luxury reserved for special occasions. Water, which should be the source of life, is not always reliable. The Nile, which seems like a loyal friend, can bring with it diseases and bacteria. The only way to ensure the water is safe to drink is to ferment it, causing the fermentation process to eliminate some of the impurities. That's why what you have next to the bread is not just water, but a thick beer with a strong sour taste that helps to ensure the risk of disease is minimized. But even with this precaution, the fear of falling ill never disappears. Death from unknown diseases is a constant threat. And diseases are as common as hard work. There are no medicines to treat wounds, and antibiotics are just a distant dream. What you have to protect yourself are rudimentary ointments made from honey, resin, and even hippopotamus fat. They help to relieve pain but do not truly heal. And if something more serious happens, like an infection or a high fever, there is not much to be done. The doctors, often priests, recite magic formulas and apply poultices, but most of the time, it is luck that decides who survives and who cannot overcome the illness. Parasites, infections, and dysentery are always present. The unsanitary working conditions and skin diseases are common among the workers who, at the end of a long day, can barely recover. There are no toilets, and the diseases that spread quickly from the accumulation of dirt in the streets and constant contact with contaminated water are a daily threat. Death from simple causes, like a mosquito bite, can be a fatal sentence, because there is no way to combat these diseases effectively. At home, the situation is not much better. The women who spend the day taking care of the children, grinding grains, and preparing the little food they can get, also face the constant risk of disease. Pregnancy and childbirth, for example, are moments of great danger. Many women give birth at home, with little or no medical care, and 1 in 4 children does not survive to adulthood. If the baby survives, a cut is made in their hair, leaving a small side tuft, as a sign that the child has been accepted by the gods and will have a chance at eternal life. The struggle for survival here is not limited to physical labor. It also involves the constant battle against disease and a diet that only manages to keep you on your feet, but not healthy. Everything revolves around the need to stay alive, but even that seems fragile in the face of the forces of nature, diseases, and destiny. Arriving home, tiredness mixes with a momentary relief. The simple but welcoming house of adobe and reeds offers a temporary refuge from the day's toil. Your wife, still young, takes care of the children while trying, with what she can, to ensure that everyone in the house is fed. Love here is not a luxury or a choice. It is a necessity for survival, to keep the flame of hope alive. Marriage in ancient Egypt is not based solely on affection, but on a pact of survival. By the age of 14 or 15, many young people are already married, as the time to start a family is scarce, and the need for unity to face adversities is imperative. What unites couples, more than romance, is the need to secure a future for their children, a future that, in many cases, is uncertain. In childhood, children know their place very well. They play with small clay figurines and jump over stretched goatskins, but they soon begin to learn that work, the land, and the Nile with all its unpredictability, are their only certainties. By age 7, boys already accompany their fathers in the fields, while girls stay at home learning to grind grains or tend to the fire. Life here is not about dreams or desires, but about ensuring that the cycle of life continues, even if it means submitting to a severe and often cruel fate. But no matter how much life is marked by hard work and daily struggle, it is also permeated by the presence of the gods and the constant reflection on the afterlife. For the ordinary Egyptian, death is not the end, but the beginning of another journey. The fear is not of death itself, but of not being accepted by the gods in the afterlife. That is why, even in the midst of chaos and scarcity, there is an obsession with fulfilling the laws of Ma'at, order, truth, and balance. For only in this way, according to the Egyptian belief, can your soul be guided to the afterlife. It is not gold or riches that guarantee a good journey after death, but righteous conduct during life. A pure soul is measured in the hall of truth, where your heart will be weighed against a feather. If the weight of the heart is greater than the feather of truth, it will be devoured by Amit, the devourer of souls. This judgment of the gods is not just a matter of religion, but a vital necessity. Your life is not only a reflection of the choices you make, but also of how your actions can guarantee a future in eternity. You live not only for yourself, but for future generations, for the gods, and for the collective. Death is not just personal, but it is a reflection of the collective destiny of your people. Children are taught from an early age that for the family and soul to continue on the path of truth and justice, they must honor the gods and ancestors. Every act, from the way you work to how you deal with death, is a step towards eternal life. When the day ends and the Nile calms down, the tiredness of the body does not disappear, but the mind calms down under the belief that your daily conduct is being observed. And perhaps if you live justly, you will find a place among the gods. So as you look at the children who sleep in silence, you see them not just as a continuation of your lineage, but as a guarantee that one day your soul will be well received by divine judgment. Life for the ordinary Egyptian is a cycle of work, worship, and survival. But it is also a cycle that promises eternity if lived with righteousness. In ancient Egypt, the gods are not just distant and powerful beings. They are in every corner of your life, watching your actions, your words, and even what you do when no one is looking. The concept of Ma'at, order, truth, and balance is not just a moral principle, it is the foundation of all life, and without it, nothing works. The belief that everything in the universe has its place and its time guides every action. And that is what you carry in your heart, this constant awareness that any deviation, no matter how small, can bring the wrath of the gods and, with it, destruction. In every step you take, the divine presence is felt. The priests, in their ceremonial robes, celebrate rituals in honor of the gods. But in everyday life, the worker himself feels the pressure of these deities upon him. The sun god, who rises every morning and sets at night, is the symbol of this constant renewal. But Osiris, the god of death and eternal life, is the one who rules the true destiny of each soul. At the end of your life, no matter how much you have worked or suffered, you will be judged. Your soul will be weighed, not by your riches or deeds, but by your ability to live in accordance with Ma'at. The belief in divine judgment is the greatest force that guides the Egyptians. At the moment of death, your soul will be led to the hall of Ma'at, where Anubis, the god of the dead, will weigh your heart against a feather. This feather represents truth, the lightness of a pure life, without lies, without corruption, without errors. If your heart is pure, you will be accepted, and your soul will travel to the afterlife, where it will live eternally. But if the weight of your heart is greater than that of the feather, the goddess Amit, the devourer of souls, will wait to swallow your essence, condemning it to a point of no return, where torment and oblivion are eternal. The fear of failing this judgment never disappears. You live every day with a constant pressure to do what is right, not to displease the gods, to live with Ma'at in your mind. Therefore, even the smallest gestures are important. A mistake, no matter how simple it seems, can be the key to a fate you do not wish to face. And that is why, even in the field, while you work under the relentless sun, or while your family struggles with hunger, you know that every act of justice, every moral decision, counts for your final judgment. It is this belief that gives the Egyptians strength to bear the weight of life. For them, it is not just about surviving the heat, the exhaustive work, or the diseases that constantly threaten them. What really matters is ensuring that, in the end, when the overseer is no longer there to shout your name, you have fulfilled your spiritual mission. Because in the end, the work in the field, the sweat, the hunger, and even personal losses are just temporary tests. The true goal is to live in a way that your soul is received by the gods, allowing you to have an eternal life of peace, without the weight of diseases, heat, or pain. As night falls, the desert heat subsides a little, and the body, which has been subjected to hours of effort, finally finds some relief. The clear, starry sky opens up before you, and for a brief moment, the day's tiredness mixes with a sense of quietness. The journey, no matter how arduous, has come to an end, but you know that tomorrow will bring the same cycle again. The shout of the overseer, the struggle for bread, and the incessant desire to please the gods. But as the Nile murmurs in the background, you reflect with a slight sigh of relief. The work you did today, the obedience to the rules, and the sacrifices made are not just about the present. They are in fact an investment in the future. Ancient Egypt is not just a place of work and sweat, but of hope. The hope that one day your soul will be welcomed by the gods, far from the pain and struggle that the body knows. You know that by living with Ma'at, by trying to be just, balanced, and truthful, you are doing everything you can to ensure that your soul goes to eternal peace, where the heat does not burn, where the sun does not punish, and where work does not weigh on your shoulders. Here, in the tranquility of the end of the day, while the children sleep and your wife prepares a final gesture of affection, you find a brief moment of peace. It is not a complete peace. It is not the peace of inaccessible luxury, but it is a peace born from the acceptance of the cycle you live. Every day is a battle, but every night brings with it the hope that, by living justly, you will achieve immortality. Thus, the greatness of Egypt is not made only of stone pyramids, the Pharaoh's riches, or immortal hieroglyphs. True greatness lies in daily resilience, in the struggle for survival, in the effort to live in accordance with what the gods expect from every human being. And it is this silent force, these anonymous hands that carry the weight of the world, that truly shape Egypt. Not the glory of a king, but the perseverance of thousands of common souls, all united by a shared destiny, to achieve eternal life. Therefore, the next time you look at the pyramids, at the statues of gods, or at the grandiose temples, remember, all of this was built by those who, like you, spent their days under the sun, eating bread and facing the desert heat. Those who, without a name, without treasures, without glory, gave their lives in a collective effort for Egypt to be eternal. And in doing so, they not only left a legacy of stones, but also a lesson that resonates to this day. That true greatness is not in wealth or power, but in the humility of daily work, in the effort for the common good, and in the belief that, in the end, divine justice will prevail. It is difficult to imagine what it would be like to live in ancient Egypt, where each day became a battle against scorching heat, diseases, and hunger, where sweat is not just a sign of effort, but of a life that depends on forces beyond your control. The fear of the overseer, the pressure to please the gods, and the struggle to secure a future for your family were the only constants. And even with all this, there was still a flame of hope, a belief that if you lived in accordance with Ma'at, one day your soul would reach eternal peace, free from the torments of earthly life. When we look at ancient Egypt today, we only see the wonders that were built, the pyramids, the temples, the precious artifacts. But what truly built all this was the silent dedication of millions of anonymous people who spent their days under the scorching sun without ever dreaming of fame or recognition. For them, the real prize was not gold or power, but the hope that, at the end of their lives, they would be accepted by the gods, achieving an eternity free from pain and suffering. Now, as we reflect on everything that these workers lived and built, we can ask ourselves, could you endure this life? Could you face the harsh reality of ancient Egypt, with its extreme conditions and constant struggle for survival? Every morning, with the overseer's shout, with the dry bread and the intense heat, Would you be able to keep going in search of a reward that would only come after death? Today, our lives may be very different, but the reflection on ancient Egypt teaches us something fundamental. Even in the most difficult conditions, even without riches or glory, daily effort, discipline, and the belief in something greater than ourselves can lead us to achieve our own goals, our own forms of eternity. For as the Egyptians believed, the true value of life is not in accumulating material goods, but in living with purpose, with integrity, and with faith. So, the next time you look at your daily routine, remember that, just like the Egyptians, we all have our own struggles and challenges. But if we can live with balance, with truth, and with hope, we can also leave our own legacy, not in stone or gold, but in our actions, in our character, and in the way we face life's obstacles. See you in the next chapter, where together we will continue to explore the stories of the past, to understand how they still speak to us today. Until then, may the gods or science be in your favor.